Welcome in, Braves Today, bravestoday.com. It is all brought to you by Plains Coffee. Go to plainscoffee.com, promo code BRAVES, your 10% off. He is Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor. I know it's been an all-star break. It's been a while, but we're back. And
I was in Dallas for part
I
of
was
it,
going to
for
say,
full
yes,
disclosure. Ben wanted the pod, and I was in Dallas at the Futures game and the draft and all that stuff. So
exactly.
full disclosure there.
you have an excellent reason for being, and it actually was a cool trip, and you can read about a lot of that on bravestoday.com, as Lindsay has documented some of that and some of the things he saw to the futures as well as draft. And but what we're got to focus on now is first half is over with, behind us. And I told you that two guys that I really need to step up, because I don't know that Ozuna is going to keep his torrid pace, even though he has been kind of up and down. But still, I think some pitchers are starting to go around him. And the reason they can throw around him is because there are some holes in the lineup right now. Now, they have picked it up and did a little bit better towards the end of the second half of the first half. That just made sense. But Austin Riley and Olson have got to, in my opinion, Lindsay, have got to be the two anchors of this ball club and hit the ball a lot better in the second half in order for the success to come about. And the reason being is because of all the guys around them, it will allow them to be better if they get the bat swinging.
Yeah, and I'm starting to think that maybe the ship has sailed on Matt Olson's 2024 being in the same neighborhood as 23 outside of the home run production. He's not going to hit 54 home. He doesn't have enough time for that. But when you look at Austin Riley, it was a very, very slow start, right? He batted 226 in April. He batted 231 in May. That's when he missed 2 weeks with the injury. So you can kind of divide his season really in half, because March and April, 28 games, May, 14 games, injury. He came back. He played 27 games in June. He's played 13 in July. And it's like, he batted 289 in June. He batted 298 in July.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like Austin Riley is doing that. It feels like he is coming back. He is giving you what you're looking for. But when you look at Matt Olson's splits month to month, like he had he picked it up a little bit in May and June, but July's kind of back to he's 7 of 47 in the month of July. He's batting 149 with a 496 OPS. And that's after his OPS was almost 800 in May and still 750 and change in June. So it feels like Riley's the one you're going to be able to count on more than Olson. The issue is that no matter how you flip-flop Ozuna and Riley and everything, Matt Olson's still batting fourth.
Yes.
He's your cleanup hitter. I'm not suggesting move him out of that spot. Lord knows we've seen how some of those moves can mess guys up. But it's a situation where, no, he's not going to hit 54 homers, but he's got to do more than he's doing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he has 13 home runs right now, just past the halfway point of the season. He's on pace to not even hit 30 bombs this year.
Well, that was my next question. Is there any way he could get to 30? Because there are less games in the second half of the season than there are the first half.
Yeah, they played 95 of 162. So he's going to have to pick up the homer pace significantly if he wants to hit 30 home runs this year. If he fails to reach 30 homers, it would be the first time in a full-length season, so we're throwing out 2020, that he hasn't done it since 2018. He hit 29 homers in 2018, was a Gold Glover for Oakland at first base, but only batted, I think he batted 247 that year. And like, you would take 247 with 29 homers from Matt Olson right now if we told you you're going to get that, because he's batting 229 with 13 homers. And he's on pace for like 25. So that's the big confusing thing to me. He's got to figure that out.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's something he's got to go back to the drawing board and see if he's doing something different, if it's his approach, if it's the way he's looking at pitches. I will say I don't like when I jump online, which I know we're not supposed to jump online and read comments of various fans and all that kind of stuff. That's not what you're supposed to do. But people calling for him to basically turn in his resignation or for them to look for somebody else. Listen, it's a slump. Like, clearly you can see throughout the season, he's got spurts of greatness. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like he needs LASIK eye surgery like Freddie had to get a few years ago in order to
Rosario got it.
Rosario got it. Yeah, so it's almost like he needs that sort of move to happen, because he will go through a spot where we'll see him for a week. Man, he's tearing the cover off the ball. Even he's barreling balls, even if it hits somebody in the glove every now and then, because it ain't like he's fixing to beat a ground ball out to first. But then he'll go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. And
Right.
it's just frustrating.
Here's the frustrating thing when people complain about Matt Olson, right? Is his OPS in Atlanta is within 2 points of his OPS in Oakland. Every single one of his stats in the slash line is within 1 or 2 points of what it was in Oakland. 252 hitter in Oakland over 6 years. 254 in Atlanta, 2 points better. 348 on base in Oakland, 347 in Atlanta, 1 point. 511 slugging in Oakland, 510 slugging in Atlanta, 1 point. The only difference is we saw him at his absolute best last year.
Correct.
And now we're seeing him at, statistically, his absolute worst. And so it's fair to be frustrated about how streaky it feels like he is and how hot and cold he has run in the last year and a half. It's really not fair to think that the version that Atlanta is getting is somehow worse than what Oakland had.
Right.
This is literally exactly who he was when you traded for him. It's just the highs weren't as high and the lows weren't as low in Oakland as it all is right now, where, he's batting 229 with a 714 OPS. That would be his lowest career OPS counting 2020 when he only batted 195 in 60 games. So this is who Matt Olson is. It's just frustrating that the lows got lower at the same time the highs got higher, right?
And I've said over and over, Matt Olson is a guy, I need 260 to 280. And I need 30 to 40 home runs. Now, I'm not going to get the 30 to 40 this year, but I can still get that 280 if he comes around and keeps barreling balls. Something's got to start falling before it's all said and done with. So,
yeah, his 162 game average in his entire career is a 40 homer season with a 253 batting average. If you were getting that from Matt Olson this year, you would not be mad. You would be Yes, frustrated it was so much lower than 54 homers and a 283 average. Like, he led the league in slugging last year. He led the National League in slugging. He led baseball in homers and RBIs, and OPS was almost 1,000, right? But if you were getting that career 162 game average of, again, 40 homers, 253 average, you would take that 7 days a week and Sunday after church. It's just not, you're just frustrated because you're not getting that. And
speaking of people that want to get rid of Matt Olson and get rid of others, but before we get to that, go to plainscoffee.com, promo code BRAVES, 10% off. Coffee is not roasted until you make your order. They're going to ship it right to your door. If you're not a coffee fan, then you can grab some teas as well. If you are a coffee fan, you also can get flavored coffee. So be sure to go to plainscoffee.com, promo code BRAVES, 10% off. I said, people want to get rid of Matt Olson. Well, let's talk about some things that they need to possibly do and maybe some ads that they may have. This is that benchmark in the season where things start getting serious with trade rumors, with acquisitions, with some people being DFA'd that maybe the Braves could pick up or something of that nature. As far as looking in your crystal ball, what does it look like they may do? We talked about corners. They added Rosario. I don't think he's had enough time to prove whether he's going to be a great addition or not. However, let's look at maybe some possible moves that they make.
Yeah, and I think this morning's news that Ramon Laureano's back from the IL is going to be big here, because you can set up what feels like the ideal outfield scenario between now and the deadline. You don't have Michael Harris, obviously, but Kelenic in center, playing every day. When Laureano was here, as long as he felt okay, he was playing almost every day. And then you can platoon Eddie Rosario and Adam Duvall in left field. Because Rosario last year, he rarely made the lineup against a lefty starter, but he batted 258 against righties last year. And as soon as that lefty starter left the lineup, Rosario would check in for Kevin Pillar and play the rest of the game. Adam Duvall, he's batting 256 against lefties. He's batting 156 against righties.
Ooh.
He's hit 8 homers and 86 at-bats against lefties. He's got 6 homers against lefties and 86 at-bats. He's got 2 homers and 240 at-bats against righties. So this is the ideal outfield arrangement until Michael Harris comes back, right? Platoon those 2 guys in left, Laureano in right, Kelnick in center. And I think the next 2 weeks are going to decide, do you get an outfielder at the deadline? Because I don't think it's a certainty that you do. Do you get an outfielder at the deadline? And if you do, how much do you have to pay? What caliber of player do you have to get? Can you get by with a guy like a Tommy Pham? Do you have to give extra prospect capital to go out and get somebody better? What do you do? And I think it's going to depend on how does Laureano do in right, and can that outfield platoon or that left field platoon, can they handle it? I still don't think there's a quality shortstop available. Shortstop is the hardest position to upgrade during the season. It takes really good prospects. And I don't think Atlanta's going to part with the guys necessary to get a really good shortstop. Never mind, there's not going to be a lot available at the deadline. What you have is what you have. You have Orlando Arcia, who has been dreadful offensively, but can carry his weight defensively. You have a guy like a Zach Short. You have a Luke Williams who could fill in if you need him to. And then Ignacio Alvarez dealing with a hand issue in Gwinnett. I don't think they're going to call him up. Mm-hmm. The real question for me is, are you settled enough in the outfield that you can devote all your resources to a starter, a starting pitcher? Right. Or do you have to divide your resources up and or give up more prospects to get a starting pitcher and a shortstop? And an outfielder. Because, yes, Ian Anderson's working his way back. AJ Smith-Shawver's rehabbing in the minors. Yes, you have those guys coming sometime down the stretch here. But it still feels like they're going to need to have extra starters to build in rest for Sale, to build in rest for Lopez. Even Morton, who's 40, right? Mm-hmm. I turned 40 this year, and I'm exhausted all the time. So, I get it. The thing that I wonder is, does Atlanta feel the need to get a guy that they think could start a playoff game if needed? Mm-hmm. Because you're set in the rotation right now. If one of those guys goes down, all of a sudden you're in trouble. If two of those guys go down, you're really in trouble. Yeah. And so what's the plan? How aggressive do you have to be at starting pitcher? I feel like you can probably get a guy who could start in the postseason if you don't have to also trade for an outfielder. So it all kind of connects. But for me, I'm watching outfield. I'm watching starting pitching. I don't think they end up making a move in the bullpen unless it's a throw-in guy. I don't think they make a move in the infield unless it's somebody who can just be an upgrade over Zach Short on the bench. Mm-hmm. But I do feel like outfield and starting pitcher are the two areas to watch. And the caliber of guy they get at starting pitcher, I think, depends on how the outfield does. That was a really long answer. Sorry.
Well, I say that because I got asked about that, and somebody asked about possibly relief. And I said, here's what, if they're going to get anybody for the bullpen, I'm looking at them getting somebody like Chavez that is probably not happy where they are, not doing well. And they're like, you know what? Let's bring that. They're going to be cheap. We can bring them in. We can throw them in 1 or 2 innings to see how they do. And if they don't do well, then we let them go. So I think that's what because they were like, do we need bullpen help? I'm like, no, not.
Atlanta's bullpen is like second or third in lowest innings pitched. And the ERA is one of the better ERAs in baseball. Like, it's been a really good bullpen. And unlike previous seasons, Atlanta hasn't had to ride any of these guys too hard because these bullpens have been gassed in the postseason for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. You rode them too hard. You haven't done that this year. Atlanta's been more aggressive about if a guy's sore or not feeling right, we're just going to IL him. We're not going to play a man down in the bullpen. It's the opposite of what they've done with the lineup, right?
Yeah.
They've carried so many injured guys in the position player group for a week on the bench hurt. In the bullpen, if you say you're sore, you're on the IL, right?
Yeah.
But they've managed the workload so well, and some of that's the starters going so deep into games like they have. So I don't think the bullpen, for like the first time in a couple of years, I don't think the bullpen's a priority. Now, if a really good reliever gets thrown into a package, let's say you're getting Jack Flaherty from the Tigers, and they want to throw in a good reliever because they want to get rid of that contract. Like, I don't think Anthopoulos turns them down, but I don't think it's a priority. He's calling for bullpen help. He's calling for starting pitching help. Maybe check it in on the outfield, and then he'll take a reliever if they have one.
Moving into the second half, I got to ask you on the first half, did the two-part question here. Did the Phillies overachieve, number one, and did the Braves underachieve in the first half of the season? Because I feel it was like a combination of the both. Just from, if you're a fan, it feels like Philly overachieved, that torrid pace will not continue in the second half. And it also feels like the Braves underachieved because they didn't score runs. So if those bats come around at all or any balls start falling, there's going to be more runs on the board. And if the pitching continues to do what it's doing, the Braves should make up a little bit of ground.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Philly's schedule, right? They had some really hot months. They went 19-9 in April. They went 20-7 in May. And if you look at some of the offensive stuff, they're fourth in baseball in runs scored. They've scored 477 runs, right? Fourth in baseball in runs scored. Atlanta is significantly lower than where they had been. Atlanta's in the bottom half in runs scored. At 407, they're 19th in baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Philly's only up 8.5 games.
I know.
And what's wild is Atlanta is 20 games worse in the first half than they were last season, right? Like, that's the wildest thing to me. They were 31 games over 500 last year, Atlanta was. They're 11 games over this year. And despite all of that, Atlanta's only 8.5 games down. Philly was farther down than that last year. Philly was 11 games back in Atlanta and in third place.
Yeah, you shocked me when you said that. I completely forgot about that. I thought they were in
Miami was in second place at the trade deadline. They were 8.5 games back at the trade deadline. And so Philly, it feels like Philly overachieved. I know one of the things going around, the third easiest schedule in the back half of the season is Atlanta's. And I want to say like the fifth hardest schedule or something like that is Philly's. They navigated some injuries. They lost Harper for a little bit. They lost Schwarber for a little bit, like minimum stints. They're still without JT Realmuto. Everybody who they lost Trey Turner for a while.
Yeah.
Everybody who stepped in absolutely nailed it. Right. Edmundo Sosa was amazing at shortstop. Mm-hmm. Johan Rojas filled in the out. Like Nick Castellanos finally came back to life.
Oh, he is. Yeah, he's woke up. That's
especially since the people started dying early in July.
Yeah.
But it feels like every single thing broke right for Philly, and almost everything broke wrong for Atlanta, right? I mean, the offense has been down. Everybody slumped at the same time. You lost Strider, you lost Acuna, and you're still only 8.5 games back. Mm-hmm. And, if Philly couldn't put away Atlanta when everything went in their favor, what's going to happen when 2 or 3 things break in Atlanta's favor instead of Philly's in the back half? Now, we don't know for a fact that's going to happen. This season feels like it's cursed, I swear to goodness. But if everything doesn't break for Philly in the second half of the season, can they keep that lead over Atlanta? I personally don't know if I care about Atlanta chasing down Philly. It's not a lost season if they don't chase down Philly for the division.
I completely agree.
But I guarantee you Philly's thinking about it. Philly's thinking about, we can't put these guys away. We can't. When we face them, they won the series every time. They still haven't beat Atlanta in a series this year. What is it? Atlanta is they're 2-4 against Atlanta, and they've been outscored by 21 runs.
Yeah,
games. Everything's broken their way in the first half. They still can't put away Atlanta, and they still can't beat Atlanta. And so, if I'm Philly, I'm a little nervous about the fact that we still haven't put away Atlanta. Can we do it in the second half? I don't know. If I'm Atlanta, I'm feeling pretty good about my chances of at least making the divisional race close, right?
Well, and the thing is, what you got Philly looking in their rearview mirror is Atlanta and the divisional titles. And so it's almost one of those things where, hey, we can't put them away. They're just hanging around. If it gets down to 1 to 2 game lead towards the end of the season and things go sour, here's that word luck, because Philly fans love when I use that word. If we get a little bit, if Philly fans get, the Phillies get a little bit of bad luck and the Braves finally get a bit of good luck, things could flip really quickly throughout the second half of the season. So I know they don't like that word, but it's like you just said, it happens, man. I mean, when you're talking about Strider going down, you're talking about Acuna going down, talking about the bad luck for the Braves, and then all of a sudden been shut out by more than any other team, it seems like, in the National League have the Braves. And so if that stops, if the shutouts stop, then all of a sudden you got somebody in your rearview mirror that has some championship caliber that's been there and done it before, and they could possibly turn it on.
Yeah. I mean, it's listen, you're in the driver's seat. 100% like not going to argue with you. And this reminds me of the Jordan thing. Like, it's easy to talk trash when you're ahead,
Yeah.
right? But what can you do down the stretch? Can you live it up? Like, I'm somewhat talking trash now from behind because I'm confident that like 9 times out of 10, if these teams are in this situation, Atlanta is good enough to come back and at least make it close. And I think that's going to happen this year. And Philly has to either somehow hit another gear. Atlanta has to keep having everything go against them. And just the odds are that one of those two things isn't going to happen.
Go to bravestoday.com. All the information you need. Lindsay's got a couple of articles up there. We've got some other guys that are writing as well. They'll give you all the info you need as we head into the second half. Goodness gracious. Doesn't seem like the season's almost over, but it will fly by, and then the playoffs will begin. And right now, in the driver's seat in the wild card, could be in the driver's seat as far as the division is concerned, just because you never know if Philly's going to be looking over their shoulder. Lindsay, as always, I greatly appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks, buddy.